Girl dies and returns in another body. True story of children's reincarnation. July 14, 1877, Watseka, Illinois. I am not Lurency. Lurency is gone. I am Mary now. The words came from the mouth of the 13-year-old girl with a coldness that froze the blood of Lorinda Venom, who had just watched her own daughter convulse violently on the kitchen floor and awaken with empty eyes, completely different. What made those words even more terrifying was a fact Lorinda would take a few minutes to process. Mary Roff had died exactly 5 years earlier, at the age of 18, in that very same small town of Watseka. Just minutes before, Lurency Venom had been nothing more than an ordinary girl helping her mother with breakfast, stirring the cake batter and chatting about the day's chores. Now the child who rose from the kitchen floor looked at Lorinda as if she were a complete stranger, spoke with the maturity of a young adult, and claimed to be someone who was dead and buried in the local cemetery. What happened over the next 4 months would defy everything medicine knew about life, death, and the nature of human consciousness. Before we continue with this true story, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and write in the comments from which country you're watching this video. I always read them and love to know how far I'm reaching. The echo of Lorinda's screams still reverberated through the house when Thomas Venom burst into the kitchen, confronted by a scene he would never forget. His 13-year-old daughter sitting calmly at the table, but with eyes that seemed to belong to someone else. "What happened here?" he asked, breathless from running in from the fields. Lorinda, trembling, pointed at Lurency. She says she is no longer our daughter." "Lurency, stop this nonsense right now," Thomas ordered, with his usual paternal authority. "You're frightening your mother." The girl studied him with strange curiosity before replying, "I'm sorry, sir, but I truly don't know you. My name is Mary Roff, and I need to go back home, on Main Street." Thomas felt a chill. Mary Roff had died 5 years earlier. Over the next 3 days, the Venoms fought desperately to bring their daughter back. Thomas took her to Lurency's favorite places, the barn where she used to play, the creek where they fished together. But she reacted like a polite visitor exploring someone else's property. "What a beautiful place," she would comment politely, "but it doesn't remind me of anything." Lorinda tried motherly strategies. She cooked the oatmeal that had always been her daughter's favorite breakfast, but the child gently refused it, asking instead for tea and toast. She brought Lurency's favorite doll, but the girl examined it as if it were a strange object. Every attempt failed miserably. "She'll get tired of this act," Thomas muttered to Lorinda every night, but his voice carried less conviction each day. The way the child moved through the house, her straighter posture, her more sophisticated vocabulary, even the different tone of her voice, all indicated a transformation that went far beyond any childish prank. On the third morning, when the girl woke up asking to visit Mary Roff's grave, "To understand why everyone says I'm dead," Thomas finally admitted to himself, something terrible and unexplainable had happened to his daughter. On the morning of the 4th day, with Lurency still insisting she was Mary Roff and the Venoms on the verge of a nervous breakdown, Thomas made the only decision that seemed sensible. He called Dr. E.W. Stevens, the most respected physician in Watseka. Stevens had been practicing in the region for over 30 years, and coincidentally had also been the doctor who treated Mary Roff before her death in 1865. "Doctor, our daughter has gone mad," Thomas said when Stevens arrived at the farm carrying his worn leather bag. "She insists she is a girl who died 5 years ago." Stevens adjusted his glasses, preparing himself for yet another case of female hysteria, a relatively common occurrence among teenage girls of that time. He entered the room where he found the child sitting upright in a chair, with a posture he had never seen in Lurency Venom. "Good afternoon, Doctor." "Stevens," the girl said with disconcerting formality. "It's good to see you again." Stevens frowned. He had known Lurency since she was a baby, but she had always been shy, never once greeting him with such confidence. "Lurency, I'm going to run some tests to understand what's happening to you." "My name is Mary, Doctor," she gently corrected him. "Mary Roff, and you know very well who I am." Stevens felt a chill when she smiled. It was exactly the same smile Mary Roff had before she died. "Do you remember when you gave me that bitter tonic for the fainting spells? I hated the taste, but I always drank it because Mother insisted." The doctor turned pale. That information was true. He had prescribed a specific tonic for Mary Roff, and she had always complained about the taste. But how could Lurency Venom, a girl from a different family who had barely known the Roffs, know about private medical conversations that had taken place years before she could even speak properly? Stevens realized he was not dealing with ordinary hysteria, but with something that completely defied his medical understanding. Dr. Stevens left the Venom house that afternoon with more questions than answers. During the night, he formulated a plan. If that child truly believed she was Mary Roff, he would test her with evidence only Mary could know. The next morning, he paid a discreet visit to the Roff family, explaining the bizarre situation and asking to borrow a few personal belongings of their deceased daughter. "If this is some kind of elaborate hoax," Stevens murmured to Asa Roff, "we'll find out quickly. But if it's real..." Asa, skeptical but curious, handed the doctor a small silver brooch that Mary used constantly, a hand mirror she kept on her vanity, and a family photograph taken months before her death. The following day, Stevens returned to the Venom farm carrying a discreet bag. "Lurency," he said, sitting down in front of the girl, "I'd like to show you a few things." The child immediately corrected him. "Mary, doctor. My name is Mary." He first pulled out the silver brooch without any explanation. The reaction was instant and devastating. The girl's eyes filled with tears as she stretched out trembling hands. "My brooch! My dear brooch!" She held it against her chest with an emotion impossible to fake. "Mother gave it to me on my 16th birthday. I wore it always, always. Where was it? Why wasn't it with me when—" Her voice broke into a deep sorrow that did not match a 13-year-old child. Stevens, his hands trembling slightly, showed her the mirror. "And this?" Mary smiled through her tears. "My little mirror. I kept it in the vanity drawer. Nerve always asked to borrow it when she was getting ready for dances." The doctor could no longer deny it. Those intimate details about Mary Roff and her sister Nervina were things Lurency Venom could never have known. But the final test would come with the family photograph, and her reaction would forever change the lives of everyone present. Topic 5. Mary describes her death. The final test came when Dr. Stevens slowly pulled the Roff family photograph from his bag. Mary held the image with reverent hands, and tears began to stream silently down her face. "Father, Mother, Nerve," she whispered, touching each face in the photo. "How I missed you. How I missed you so much." Lorinda Venom watched in total shock. Her daughter had never shown such emotion for people she barely knew. "Mary, Doctor," Stevens said softly. His medical voice now waited with a curiosity that transcended science. "Can you tell me what happened?" At the end, the girl lifted her eyes from the photograph, and for a moment, they seemed to carry the weight of experiences no 13-year-old should bear. "I was very sick, Doctor. Do you remember the seizures I had? They kept getting worse." Mary spoke with a mature sadness, her words filled with visceral memories. "On that last day, I knew something was different. I felt as if I were being pulled away from my body. Mother was holding my hand crying, and I wanted so badly to comfort her, but the words wouldn't come out anymore." Stevens leaned forward, mentally documenting every word. "And then?" Mary closed her eyes, as if reliving the moment. "I felt a strange peace, Doctor, as if I were floating above the bed, watching everyone cry around my body. I tried to speak to you, to tell you I was fine, but no one could hear me. I saw when you closed my eyes. I saw Father collapse to the ground. I saw Nerve run out into the yard because she couldn't stop crying." The doctor was left breathless. He remembered that terrible day perfectly. He had indeed closed Mary's eyes. Asa Roff had fainted in grief, and Nervina had run into the garden in despair. But how could Lurency Venom possibly know such intimate and painful details of a moment she had never witnessed? Mary's words about her own death left Dr. Stevens in a state of profound shock. That night, he made a decision that would change everything. He visited Asa Roff and reported with precise scientific detail every word the girl had spoken. "Asa," Stevens said, his medical voice now weighted with reluctant conviction, "either we are facing the most elaborate hoax ever conceived, or your daughter has somehow impossibly returned." Asa Roff, a practical man who worked at the local bank, listened with growing skepticism that slowly turned into involuntary trembling. "Doctor, this is impossible. Mary has been dead for 5 years. I carried her coffin myself." But when Stevens described the intimate details only Mary could know, the incident with the cat mittens, the blue birthday dress, the specific way she had died, Asa felt something he hadn't experienced since 1865, hope mixed with absolute terror. "I need to see her," Asa finally said, his hands shaking. "If she really is my Mary, she will recognize me immediately." The next day, Stevens accompanied him to the Venom farm. Thomas and Lorinda waited nervously in the parlor, while Mary quietly embroidered in a chair. seemingly oblivious to the tension that filled the air. When Asa Roth entered the room, Mary lifted her eyes from her embroidery, and her reaction was instant and devastating. "Papa, Papa," she cried, dropping her work and running into his arms with a joy both pure and desperate. "Papa, I knew you would come for me. I knew it." Asa Roth, a man who had wept only once in his adult life at his daughter's funeral, collapsed into tears, embracing the child who carried Lurency's body but Mary's heart. "My God," he whispered, "it is truly you, my little girl." In that moment, before stunned witnesses, the impossible became undeniable. Mary Roth had somehow returned. The embrace between Mary and Asa Roth lasted long minutes, while everyone in the room remained in absolute silence, witnessing something that defied the laws of nature. When they finally separated, Mary held her father's face in her small hands and said, "Papa, can I go home now? Mother and Nerve must be so worried about me." Asa looked at Thomas and Lorinda Venom, seeing the despair in the eyes of parents who were losing their daughter to a reality impossible to accept. After hours of emotionally devastating discussion, the Venoms agreed, with broken hearts, to let Mary visit the Roth home. "She is no longer our Lurency," Lorinda whispered to her husband. "I don't know what happened, but our little girl is gone." Dr. Stevens accompanied the small group to the two-story house on Main Street, his medical mind struggling to categorize what he was witnessing. When they arrived at the Roth home, Mary did not hesitate for even a second. She stepped down from the carriage and walked straight to the front door, as though she had taken that path 1,000 times. She did not look at signs, did not ask directions. She simply followed a mental map engraved in her soul. "This is my house," she said with absolute conviction, pushing the door open and stepping into the parlor. Without hesitation, Mary crossed the room with confident steps and climbed the staircase, her feet automatically finding each creaking step. "My room!" she exclaimed from the upper floor, prompting Minerva and Nervina Roth to rush after her. They found the girl standing in the center of Mary's old bedroom, turning slowly, as though drinking in every detail. "Everything is exactly as I left it," she whispered, her words carrying 5 years of concentrated longing. Dr. Stevens, watching from the doorway, realized he was documenting the return of a soul to a home it had never truly abandoned. Minerva Roth stood frozen at the bedroom door, watching that unfamiliar child move through the sacred space of her dead daughter with a familiarity that cut her heart like a blade. "Mary?" she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of 5 years of restrained grief. The girl turned and ran into her mother's arms with a sob. "Mama, my dearest Mama, how I missed you." Nervina watched the scene with a mixture of shock and protective skepticism. To be absolutely certain, she decided to give her sister a test only Mary could pass. "If you really are Mary," Nervina said in a trembling voice, "show me where you hid your secrets." Mary smiled through her tears and went straight to the old dark wood vanity in the corner of the room. With precise movements, she knelt and pressed a small panel on the vanity's right side. To everyone's astonishment, a hidden drawer slid silently open, a drawer even the parents hadn't known existed. "I always kept my most precious things here," Mary said, pulling out a small red leather diary. Dr. Stevens stepped closer, his scientific documentation now mingled with pure fascination. Mary opened the diary and began to read aloud. "March 15th, 1864. Nerve asked me today about William Turner, but I will never tell anyone that he gave me a flower last Sunday. It is our secret." Nervina collapsed into a chair, her face pale. She remembered that conversation perfectly. She had indeed asked about William Turner, and Mary had kept the secret about the boy until the day of her death. "Only you knew about this drawer, Mary," Nervina whispered, her last defenses crumbling. "Only you." Mary closed the diary against her chest and looked at her gathered family. "I promised I would come back to you. I promised I would find a way to tell you I am well." In that moment, faced with undeniable physical evidence, even the fiercest skeptics were forced to accept. Mary Roth had truly returned from beyond. With the diary still pressed to her chest, Mary sat down on the bed that had once been hers and looked at her gathered family with a serenity that did not belong to a 13-year-old child. "You want to know where I have been, don't you?" she asked softly. Dr. Stevens positioned himself discreetly with paper and pen, realizing he was about to document something without precedent in medicine. "When I died," Mary began, her voice carrying a wisdom that transcended her apparent age. "It wasn't frightening the way everyone imagines. I felt an immense peace, as though I were being wrapped in a warm light. I could see you crying around my bed. I wanted so much to comfort you, but I could no longer touch this world." Minerva held her daughter's hand, silent tears streaming down her face. "Then I was taken to a place like an endless garden, Mama. There were flowers I had never seen on Earth, colors that don't exist here. And I wasn't alone. Grandpa and Grandma were there, young again, smiling. They said they were proud of our family." Minerva sobbed. The parents Mary spoke of had died when she was far too young to remember them clearly. "Grandma asked me to tell you her apple pie is waiting for you in the beautiful place," Mary added, making Minerva tremble, for her mother had indeed been famous in the family for her pies. "But I couldn't truly rest," Mary continued, her eyes fixed on some point beyond visible reality. "I saw you suffering, especially you, Mama, who stopped smiling. Then a being of light told me I could return for a time, but not in my old body." Dr. Stevens stopped writing, his hands trembling. "Lurency's soul was very weak, nearly leaving. They offered me the chance to use her body temporarily, so I could say goodbye to you and prove that death is not the end, only a transformation." At that moment, all present understood they were witnessing not only the return of Mary Roff, but a window into the mysteries humanity has always questioned: life, death, and eternity. With the revelation of her spiritual mission, Mary was officially adopted back into the Roff family, while the Venoms, heartbroken but understanding, accepted the extraordinary situation. Dr. Stevens meticulously documented the following 3 months, observing how Mary's presence completely transformed the family, once shattered by grief. Minerva Roff, who had fallen into deep depression after her daughter's death and had barely been able to leave her bed for 5 years, smiled again. "It's as if Mary never left," she confessed to the doctor. "She helps me in the kitchen exactly as before, tells the same jokes, even sings the songs we used to sing together." Mary remembered every family recipe, every household tradition, every small ritual that made the Roff house a home. Asa Roff, who had become a bitter and closed man after losing his daughter, regained his faith and joy in life. "My daughter proved that life after death is real," he told anyone who would listen. "Now I know we will meet again." Mary accompanied him to the bank, spoke with the insight of a young woman about his business, and consoled him over fears and worries only she could have known. Nervina, initially the most skeptical, became inseparable from her resurrected sister. They embroidered together, shared secrets as before, and Mary even helped Nervina with suitors, offering advice with the wisdom of someone who had observed love from a spiritual perspective. "It's strange," Nervina confessed to Dr. Stevens, "but I feel as though we've gotten back not only Mary, but an even wiser version of her." During those blessed 3 months, the Roff home became a quiet place of pilgrimage for curious neighbors and skeptics. All left convinced this child was not simply Lurency Venom pretending to be Mary Roff, it was truly Mary, living a second chance to love her family. Yet Mary knew this happiness had an end date, and she often gazed out the window with a melancholy expression, as if hearing calls no one else could perceive. On a sunny morning in May 1878, after 3 months of restored happiness, Mary came down for breakfast with a different expression, a deep sadness mixed with resolution that made Minerva's heart pound with fear. "Mama," she said softly, sitting at the table where so many family mornings had been shared, "I need to talk with you about something important." The Roff family gathered in the parlor, sensing that the moment they all secretly feared had arrived. Dr. Stevens, who had become practically part of the family during those extraordinary months, was also present with his notebook at the ready. "Lurency is calling me," Mary said, her words falling like heavy stones in the silence of the room. "She wants her body back, and I can't deny her that right any longer." "No," Nervina exclaimed, clinging to her sister. "You just came back to us. You can't leave again." Mary embraced her with infinite tenderness. "Nerve, dear, I only came to prove that love never dies, and that we will meet again. My mission here is complete." Asa Roff, the strong man who had learned to weep again, pleaded, "Can't you stay a little longer, my daughter?" Mary smiled with a wisdom that seemed to span the ages. "Papa, if I stay, I will be stealing the life of an innocent girl. Lurency has her own journey to complete on Earth. Besides," she held her parents' hands, "now you know that I am well, that I am happy, and that when your time comes, we will meet in the beautiful place where there are no more goodbyes." Minerva sobbed, knowing it was useless to argue. Her daughter had always been stubborn, and not even death had changed that. "When?" she asked in a broken voice. "Tomorrow at noon," Mary replied. But this isn't a sad farewell, Mama. It's a celebration. You gave me the chance to say, see you later, instead of goodbye forever. That night, the Roff family stayed awake, treasuring every second of their last hours with Mary, knowing that this time, when she left, it would be final. The morning of May 21st, 1878, dawned with a golden clarity that seemed to bless the most extraordinary farewell ever witnessed in Watseka. Mary rose early and personally prepared breakfast for the family, each gesture infused with love and purpose. "I want you to remember me like this," she said, serving tea with her signature toast, "taking care of you one last time." At 11:30, the family gathered in Mary's bedroom, joined by Dr. Stevens and Thomas and Lorinda Venom, who had come to take their daughter back. Mary kissed each member of the Roff family, whispering words of love and promises of reunion. "Remember, death is only a transition. Love never dies," she said, echoing the words that would become her eternal legacy. At 11:55, she lay down on the bed that had been hers for both her lifetime and her miraculous 3 months returned. "Thank you for letting me stay long enough to heal our hearts," Mary said, closing her eyes with absolute serenity. "Now it's time for Lurency to return." What happened in the next 5 minutes defied every known law of medicine and physics. The girl's body began trembling gently, as if two invisible forces were exchanging places in a delicate cosmic dance. Dr. Stevens watched, both fascinated and terrified, as Mary opened her eyes one final time. "Until we meet again, my beloved family," she whispered in a voice already beginning to sound different. Then she closed her eyes, lay motionless for what felt like an eternity, and when she reopened them, a completely different voice asked, "Mama, Papa, where have I been? I had the strangest dreams." It was Lurency Venom who had returned, with no memory of the past 4 months except for a vague recollection of a beautiful place where a kind young woman named Mary took care of me. The miracle was complete. 2 souls had exchanged places across time and death, proving that love is the only truly eternal force in the universe. Epilogue and conclusion. Lurency Venom returned home with her parents and went on to live a long and healthy life, marrying and having children. She never again experienced similar episodes, but occasionally dreamed of Mary Roff as a dear friend from another place. The 2 families remained in contact for the rest of their lives, forever united by 4 months that changed their understanding of life and death. Dr. Stevens meticulously documented the entire case, creating the first detailed scientific record of spiritual possession in America. His work, The Watseka Wonder, influenced generations of paranormal researchers and remains one of the most well-documented cases of its kind. "This case proves that consciousness survives physical death," he wrote, "and that family love can overcome even the barrier between life and death." Today, 145 years later, the story of Mary and Lurency continues to be studied by psychologists and parapsychologists worldwide, considered one of the most convincing pieces of evidence for life after death ever recorded. Mary Roff's message echoes through the centuries with a promise that transcends time and space. Death is only a transition. Love never dies. And you? After hearing this extraordinary story, what do you believe about life after death? Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more real cases that prove mysteries exist beyond our understanding. Because some stories, like that of Mary and Lurency, transcend death itself and remind us that love is the only truly eternal force in the universe. Now stay tuned for the next video on another extraordinary mystery that challenges our understanding of reality.